Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Toxic Gamer situation discussion. Today I wanted to speak specifically about the situation where someone tells you to uninstall the game. This is an interesting one, but it's one that happens surprisingly often on the World Wide Web. If you play Dota 2, you've seen it more than twice. Now let's add into this one report. And I'm specifically talking about when they're saying report this player, when they are clearly trying their best, they're not griefing, and they've just had a rough game. Let's get these in a nice bright red, indicating aggression. So, uninstall the game. Have you seen people say this to you? And why do they say this? The why. But why though? Okay. This is when they believe the player in question is so bad that by playing any more, they continue to damage the community. This is an interesting belief to hold because everyone starts out bad. If the game is hard, everyone starts out bad. That's a really important fact to put in front of yourself. Let's have this be a nice, like a blue-green, because that's a good color for truthful stuff, maybe. Fact number 1. If the game is hard, everyone starts out bad. If a player uninstalls the game, they stop improving. So, if someone says, hey, uninstall the game, well, then you can't get any better. So, as good as you are then is as good as you're ever going to be if you do what they tell you to. And then another one is, everyone starts out bad. So, should you say uninstall the game to everyone who's new? Because that's gatekeeping, and that's basically saying no one new can join the game. Yeah, someone in the chat is saying they had someone tell them to delete Dota. It's kind of similar to uninstall. But they're basically saying you are so bad that you should never play the game again. Another fun example here, which I've had people say to me more than once, which is never play that hero again. Never play Faceless Void. What are some other characters where people have said that? Never play Anti-Mage. Never play, let's say, Roll. Never play Carry again. Never play X, etc. They will say all these kinds of things, but for you to learn any of them, you first have to start out from a place of complete ignorance, and then you gradually get a sense of how to play the character, learning some things that can go wrong every time, and then improving at some rate. So I'll give you an example from my StarCraft career. I started out in Bronze League, which is the lowest league. And most people would say that that's not a high level of mastery of the game. It's actually the lowest. But if I uninstalled the game because someone said uninstall the game, then I never would have gotten to Platinum, Diamond, Masters, and GM. So this is a really nasty thing to say that can make the person feel bad, and it's sort of like driving them out of the community overall. It's not just trying to berate them and guilt them, it's also telling them to leave. So I would say this takes it a little bit beyond just degrading the person and saying that they're bad as a form of punishment. This is punishment plus exile. They don't actually have the power to make you uninstall the game, but they can issue that verdict of, you are here deemed so bad that you should never play the game again. You can choose to queue into another match after that, but they can have that opinion. And honestly, it feels bad when someone says that. So some consequences for this one. Consequences. Burp, burp. It can discourages player from playing the game more, which is kind of their point. But if you're thinking about people who share your hobby, it's kind of like going to a convention with people who enjoy what you enjoy and then telling them to get the fuck out because you don't think they're cool enough to be in that scene. It's gatekeeping, and it's pretty shitty. We're the keepers of the gates, and you shall not enter these gates. Another one would be it distracts from the current objective. It's not actionable. Like, uninstall the game isn't going to help you win that match or make a comeback in that match. It's just a general broad-based get the fuck out kind of a recommendation, which is on a personal level, that's bad for you. Like, if you're behind, say you're on a team and the chances of that team winning are 20%. If you tell that person to uninstall the game, your chances of winning just went lower than 20%. Maybe now they're 15% because the other person feels bad and you also wasted your own time shit-talking them instead of focusing on an objective that they could do. If you figured out, okay, this person, say we'll take this Faceless Void Dota example. Faceless Void is using their time bubble on the wrong target. Just tell them what the right target is. If you think, okay, we need to lock down this person instead, just tell them. We need you to chrono the sniper. Instead of saying, never play Faceless Void again. Because the decision making is pretty complex, and maybe you know something they don't. Maybe you have more experience than them, so just heckin' help them. And then kind of similar to all of this, I've also seen people say, report this player. They'll say report Faceless Void, report Anti-Mage, but they don't usually say why, if they're just trying to make that person's situation worse because they didn't like how they played. So sometimes you'll have a person who they were trying their best, but maybe they had counter picks in the game. Maybe they just didn't really play that well. They fell behind early. So their farm is not good. Their overall performance is not good, but they're not griefing and they're not saying hateful stuff in the team chat. They just didn't have a good game. So the whole report X player is something that happens quite a bit just to try to make that person's situation worse. We'll say in this case, it can cause the person to be placed in low prio games for report calls. So if you were to say report Faceless Void, and then the enemy team did report the Faceless Void, and your team also reported the Faceless Void, but the Faceless Void didn't actually grief, they're just new, they can get put into low prio games with bad behavior players, and that ruins their experience moving forward. So you're driving people out of the community by calling for reports when they're not actually griefing. If someone is griefing, yeah, that's against the rules of the game. So calling for a report there is fine. So I'm not saying with this that you should never call for someone to be reported. Usually the only times when I do it would be if someone is, say, doing hateful slurs and stuff in team chat and the enemy team doesn't know that. Just giving them the heads up of, if you care about reporting for those reasons, they did X, Y, and Z sort of a deal, because they could be on the other team next game, and that's the kind of behavior that's just generally hateful and negative and doesn't help anyone. It is sad that people do this, but this is a pretty common thing. And then let me give you some reminders here. These are just reminders from me to you, okay? Reminders. Reminders. Font this, color this. Reminder number 1, everyone has bad games sometimes. Including me, including the pros. Sometimes you just get off to a bad start and then it goes into a worse mid game and an even worse late game. That happens. And if you reported every person who had a bad game, you would just report the losing team every time. And it would be just a huge waste of time. Another reminder is sometimes people don't know why you fell behind. or aren't performing well. They can just see that you're not performing well with the stats of like the kill death assist ratio. So they just start bashing you, telling you to uninstall, telling people to report you, but they're not giving any kind of clear objectives for you to work on. That's something that you can kind of fall back to for yourself. I'll give you an example from some of my personal games recently. I've played a bunch of Shadow Fiend mid games. He's my favorite mid hero. And I played against an Invoker who's really good. He was the best Invoker mid I've ever faced. And when he got to like level 6 or level 7, he did a wombo combo against me and he killed me once, twice, and then he killed me a third time because you got some of the power runes with haste and stuff. So I was 0-3 and having a really bad game because no Invoker mid against me up to that point did that to me. So I was dying to something new. And I figured it out, like, okay, this is definitely a power spike for that hero. I didn't know about that beforehand, so I can't really beat myself up too much. And I also can't change what happened in the early game. I'm just behind now. So you can basically take that, try to articulate what went wrong, and then make a plan for next time. So next time I face Invoker mid, I want to respect the level 6-ish power spike. I want to pressure when I'm level 3 before he gets the power spike. And then once he does, I want to play really defensive, maybe just farm jungle and things like that, so I'm not putting myself out in the line of fire. So we'll say playing, we'll say experience, nets skill over time. If you improve your fundamentals. So if you uninstall, you obviously can't gain experience, and a lot of experience means that you are losing games. So we'll say another reminder is a learning player on ranked ladder loses approximately 50% of their games. So you should lose about half. If you're going up in rank over time, maybe you have a 50% win rate, 60% win rate. It's kind of in that range, 50 to 60. Sometimes you have a below 50% win rate. So downswings happen as well. But for your MMR to be accurate, you should have about a 50% win rate, where you have swung up to the point where you win and lose about 50-50 of the time. And to improve beyond that, you would need to, like here, just improve your general fundamentals, your map awareness, your itemization, your spending, your like mouse control, keyboard control, things like that. All of that's going to drive your rating up. So to kind of zoom out from this whole situation you can be in where someone says that you should uninstall the game, the reason they're saying that is because they don't know how to articulate what you could have done better, and they're just mean. They're just being mean and non-specific. If they're calling for a report of your play as well, if you know that you were not griefing and you weren't BMing in voice chat or whatever, and they're calling for a report, you don't need to beat yourself up. You can just say, this is a mean person who doesn't know how to give me helpful feedback. But I can zoom out and say, it was a rough game for me, and the next time I'm in that situation, I'm going to focus on these 1 to 3 things to try to do better. And this has been another discussion on gamer toxic behavior, how to think about it and what you can do. Why are people so mean? I don't know. Hang in there, team.